So, just to kind of finish that thought out, and, Wilderman early on, my strength conditioning coach and mentor, really sort of laid that groundwork, right? Built a very strong foundation in what is now sort of the structure in which I work, especially within my kind of what I put out from a training perspective, and how I got into the very technical and educational components of strength training and resistance training and all of that. And really opened my eyes to, okay, there's a bigger picture here. It's not just coming in here and slinging around weights, right? There's a methodology, there's a thought process, and there's a way of strategically going about all of this, which then led me, that took me through high school or late junior high into high school and through university. And then I interned at MI40 gym back in its heyday of everyone getting along and jiving and working off each other, right? And that's the Joe Bennett hypertrophy coaches of the world, the Coach Cassim Hansen's from N1, Coach Adam Miller, who's also with N1 education, Cody Moxley, Bryce Baum, Ben Pekulski, like everyone, that was an intern there, and I spent the summer there and just lived and breathed everything that they were doing. But I was mixing in my formal education, right? I had my CSCS at this point. I was working, I was a professional physique athlete at this point. And so it was like, I was working in all of not only my formal education and experience, but also kind of like that, I don't know, aftermarket experience based, more like a la carte niche information, where I was like, oh shit, like this is how I actually start to bridge the gap here and go from classroom to practice and application with clients and really starting to move the needle. And then I worked for N1 Education for a while, which was great. Learned a ton there, and they're obviously very brilliant guys. And so, I that's sort of like my evolution, right? And I go from basically junior high to now, never really not having some sort of like mentor of some kind that's in the space of like program design, exercise technique, building foundations and all of that stuff. So when I say it was sort of inevitable that I'd end up here, it's, as long as I didn't stop doing it, leave the industry or, die, I'm sort of like, this is just what was going to happen in some iteration.
I think that's so awesome that you had your brother teaching you foundational things before you moved on. Like when you said you were doing the PVC for a while,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how, like for myself, if I would have started like that, how it is. And in high school, everyone just wants to see who can bench press the most and,
Yeah.
neglecting your legs and your back and all that. So I can't even imagine if most people took that approach where they built a strong foundation first before strongly progressing, in every lift. So that must have just given you such a good foundation with your body, but also with your knowledge as well.
Yeah. And I've always been a strong kid. Like I was a strong kid. When I went in as a freshman, I was lifting with the seniors sort of thing. And I never really struggled with that. So that could have been, when my brother's 2.5, almost 3 years older than I am. And like, anytime he started something, I did it too growing up. And so when he started pitching machine, I started pitching machine. Right. So it's like, oh, you should be in T-ball. And it's like, no, I'm going to play pitching machine. And I was like, all right, you're actually a starter and are going to be good. We'll play you here at third base. And, and I had no really business from an age perspective being there. And then it's the same with like tackle football. I skipped flag. I skipped all of that. I went straight to tackle football, like 5 years old. And it's just like that's sort of one of those things where I never really was worried about not picking it up. Like I was just like, okay, I know I'm going to pick this up. It's not a big thing. I have this strength as far as the weight room goes. But I think it's just more or less a representation of how I've approached things, less intentionally, and more of just like how it has happened, right? It's more of like, this is more of a post hoc evaluation of after the fact of like, oh, this kind of makes sense how it all played out. I can't say I was like, had that foresight as a young child, not even a little bit. I was like, what's the easiest, least friction way of doing this? Like, how can I work, listen and be coachable, but not have to like truly overly work too hard. So, that's more or less been everything. But like going into the gym, it was sort of like understanding, okay, I understand like I have strength. I'm, at this age, I'm as strong as my brother is. And that's with that regard. And so it was like, okay, I know it's there. So I'm just going to kind of go back and just be very coachable. And my grandfather, my whole life was a college football coach. And so I grew up in locker rooms, grew up around coaches, coaching. And if my brother and I were going to be anything growing up, it was going to be coachable. And so you have to listen to those who are above you and smarter than you and here to teach you. And that was really rooted in me from the beginning. And so kind of putting all that all together, it was like, you have no other option other to listen and to be coachable, regardless of strength, talent, whatever. It's like, you're not the authority here. Shut up, listen, do what he says, do it the best you can, move on. Right. And it's sort of like, all right, that's kind of been a thing over the course of my career that's sort of just stayed put. And I think that too is like why I kind of stayed on the sidelines, because it was like, well, I'm still kind of gaining the structure. I'm getting coached before I'm like gonna really kind of do all of this, right? And I don't like putting myself out there too much. Karaoke is probably my greatest fear in life. So it's like, I'm not gonna just put myself out there to just be embarrassed. Not saying anyone who sings karaoke should be embarrassed. It's just that's how I view it, for myself, which is its own thing. But I think that's more or less a bridge between all of it. It's just being able to be coachable and to listen and to not be overly confident, not to assume I know. And that's been a big part of it.
And a big part of what you do is go around the world and educate coaches and trainers and everything. With you feeling how you do about, sitting on the sidelines and observing, how has that played into that? Is it hard to public speak? Is it hard to be around all those people, or how have you felt through that whole process?
Yeah, being an authority on anything is pretty hard for me to grasp. And I think writing the book, writing Science of Strength Training and publishing that, it was a pretty cathartic experience in terms of, so, teaching as well. It was really a learning experience for me, and one that I think I gained a lot of confidence during the process of all of it. And, writing the book, I gained a lot of confidence in a lot of it. But I've always been someone who kind of like, who has dealt with imposter syndrome, and I think we all do to a degree. Right. And I think the way how I've started to move away from that has been, I'm not here to be that for anyone, right? I'm not here to be, I don't even view myself like I wouldn't call myself an expert. I wouldn't call myself an authority on any given topic. It's just, this is what I know. I may know more than you do. I may be a couple of chapters ahead, but one thing I can do is I have a very diverse history of experience, and I can draw from that to sort of give my 2 cents on any given subject in relation to how it applies to real life and to apply it to real people. And that allows me to take the raw information that everyone sort of has access to, whether it be textbooks or research papers or whatever else, or common knowledge. But I can sort of put my own experience spin on it, in my own way of critically thinking through something. And I think that's given me a lot of confidence to say, like, look, there are people who are a lot smarter than I am. And I have had a pleasure to work alongside some of them and work collaboratively with some of them. But, what I bring is something a little different. Um, and a lot of my goals don't come from a lot of the way that I teach doesn't stem from, look, I'm the authority. It's like, look, I'm one of you who has been really fortunate and exposed to a lot of different things and people and situations that's sort of given me a lot of experience to understand different parts of this. And this is what I know. This is what I think I can help you with. And this is what has made sense to me and how I have sort of bridged those gaps. And I think speaking from that place has sort of removed that feeling of being an imposter in a world that I don't think I belong in. Because to be honest, I don't think I belong in the worlds of, hey, we're the authority, listen to us. I don't think I belong there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to visit those in-laws on vacation. I more or less just want to chill with the people that sort of just need help or also just looking to be a bit better in that. So.
And the people you're educating, is this done mainly through like seminars, or are you going to gyms or corporations, or who do you normally educate?
Yeah. So a lot of the education and traveling came when I was working 4-in-1 education. So I was a coach and educator for them for a couple of years. And that's where I did most of the teaching. And so I think that too is like, I was never the one, I was just a part of a team that was doing it. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence too. And it's like, I don't, eventually I'll be the one who's sort of there to teach. But up until this point, I've just been a part of the team that's there to teach, right? I was never the reason people were coming. I was just a pleasant surprise once people got there, I think. And can contribute different aspects of things to those people relative to the others who they may have came for, right?
Yeah.
So, I've had seminars planned out before, all this stuff happened in the world, with, a couple different guys who are more in the world of education. And I think a lot of these roles are more collaborative than anything. And I think, again, that falls back to, I don't view myself as that authority for people, more so than just I'm among a group of authority figures, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If that is even different, but in my head, it's a bit different. I'm not the one, I'm just one of them that can help, more or less.
I agree that the imposter syndrome, I feel like it's always firing, no matter how much you know about a subject, because it's always a thought of, okay, well, someone knows way more than I do. So it's kind of hard to not feel like that, at least for me, for sure.
And
Yeah.
it can be liberating in a lot of ways because I think there's this facade that you almost have to live by. There's this, you become a character. You become a character of like a caricature of yourself. And you're like, you have to almost become this actor in the moment of this thing, right? And because I don't exude that in real life. Like if you met me, like I'm just like this in real life. Like I usually, if you ask me, I'm never going to take the spot of the authority, the authority in any given moment. Right? It's just kind of like, I don't know, what do you think? And it's like, I have something to say on the subject, but it's like, I'm not the first one to ever like, oh, I know, trust me, this is it. This is the way. But to go back to your actual question before I went super off track, but we educated a lot of different personal trainers. We went into gyms that hired us to educate their personal training staff. So when I was doing it, we worked with Ultimate Performance and like UP gyms, which are all over the world, and some different niche gyms that are across the globe. Whether that was in Canada or Europe or whatever, it was really cool. And another point of imposter syndrome for me was, when I was doing this, would have been a couple of years ago. So I was, 25, 26, and was like teaching, 30, 40, some of them 30, 40 years old, been training clients for 20 plus years. And it's like, You know, they're almost, when I show up, they're like, who are you? You're an infant. What do you know? And it's like, dude, to some degree, that's true. But I am here and I am on this side of the room, right? So there's a reason I'm here. And I think I can teach you something. But I think the liberating part for me was I also know you can teach me something.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you can teach me how to teach this better and how to connect this to people like you, coming from people like me. And again, it kind of goes back to like, hey man, I'm one of you. I just happen to be on this side rather than on that side, because I've been on the other side quite often, right? Again, being trying to always be a coachable person, understanding that I've been on the other side long enough to know that I kind of need to exist in both at all times has definitely allowed me to, I think, to better cope with that moment, you know, it's in that in here.
Awesome. I heard you say a few minutes ago that you were an IFBB Pro. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a past life, man.
How was that whole process and that whole journey? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I started competing when I was 19. I'm 28 now. I just turned 28 in October. So it's been a, you know, I competed. I started when I was 19. By the time it was competed, like I think I had four shows when I was 19 to win throughout my 20s. I competed 4 times, and on that 4th show, that was a national event where I turned pro at the 2014 North Americans in Pittsburgh, which is I think around this time. I think it may have just happened, but you know, that was a very interesting evolution of time in my life. It felt like the first time that I ever sort of got control, was given the reins on something, because I felt like everything else was sort of out of control, and I didn't know where it was going. You know, that was at a time where, due to, you know, different severities of head trauma, I was taken out of sports, which I thought was my vehicle to my future, and turns out it wasn't. And so I needed, you know, the kind of that story of like, you needed something competitive to do, and something physical for me, someone that I think has a lot of physical potential, but also more importantly has a lot of physical energy that he needs to get off. So it kind of gave me an outlet to move towards. It gave me a purpose when I needed a purpose that wasn't purely academic, because that up to this point had been a foreign concept to me. So that was one thing. And I think each one played off each other. Like, I don't think my academic career became and my professional career becomes what it does, like what it has, and, you know, hopefully continues to go without competing, and vice versa. So, and I started competing when I was 19, turned pro 9 months later. And then I competed till I was about 23, I think 24, probably 23. 2016 was my last hoorah, my last pro event. It's probably been my last one ever. Yeah, I'm not interested. Because I also, that year I got married. We moved to Australia, and like, I think that was kind of the perfect sign off of like that part of my life. Was like, you know, I was engaged on my last show. I wanted my wife to I wanted to experience it with my wife. I wanted to experience it, you know, with this person, and have her experience what was such a pivotal thing in my life, to take me where I wanted to go. And it kind of like, those qualities you sort of need to be dug out, right, through added pressure, or they needed to be dug out, like they're deep within you, but you needed something to get them out of you. And competing was that for me. Like, all aspects of it, like the part where people find them the most challenging and you know, exhausting, I found is, you know, obviously challenging and exhausting, but almost the opposite in a lot of ways. Was like, oh, I actually am good at this part. And you saw throughout my process, you saw a lot of the process of me competing, you saw a lot of people fall off the map because they couldn't stick with what was really hard. Or, other shit happened in their life that they wanted to not do anymore. But I saw it as kind of like the former, and I took a lot of pride in my ability to do that and to actually be good at something that I was in control of. It's the first individual sport I ever did. I had never played an individual sport ever. Not really. I mean, I track when I was in 6th grade. I won the county and retired. That was my last year of track. It's just sort of a theme in my life. Like,
Yeah.
I won county or one city in 6th grade. And I was like, all right, that's it. And then it was the same thing with wrestling for me. The other individual sport that I did was like, I kind of went out on top. I was like in 4th or 5th grade, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And same with competing. It was like, all right, dude, like this is sort of ran its course. I've gotten what I needed from it. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I just kind of kept doing the coaching part of it because I enjoyed the other part. Because I had clients at the time, and we kind of just kept the business going. And that's sort of the evolution of physique development and all of that. And I always say, I haven't stopped doing it yet. So here I am.
That was going to be my next question. I was really excited to hear about physique development. It's one of the things you're definitely known for. So what was that like in the beginning, and the challenges that you faced? Because you guys have an app, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from what I've heard, I don't know, really anything about developing an app, but I heard it's a pretty insane process, and it takes longer than you think, and it's more expensive than you think, and all of the above. So can you kind of enlighten me a little bit with what that was like in the beginning, and then just kind of like your guys' overall mission and goal with what you do?
Yeah. I think what's educate, inform, empower. Educate, train, empower. That's our, I made it up. I didn't even remember it. Educate, train. We're sold on it though, man. And I think that's sort of a thing or a representation of how everything's evolved and changed and keeps growing and evolving and changing over time. But physique development starting out, it's just my buddy Alex and I, who co-founded it. And it was in college, and I had already been competing. Alex and I went to high school together, grew up together, didn't really become friends until after high school, and kind of when I was already competing, and he was interested in that world and getting into all of it. And so we basically approached me at our local gym and was like, hey, I'd love to get a session in, just train. And I was like, I threw out I threw out the test, right? Because like, especially at that point, like nothing could break me. So it was like, I think it was like at midnight that night. And I was like, all right, legs, 6 a.m. See you then. And he showed up and crushed it, pushed me a lot. And then he showed up again, crushed it, pushed me a lot. And that was sort of the theme, right? And this is actually a similar speech that I gave as the best man at his wedding. And I bridged it to connect his ability to just keep showing up. But that's what kind of it just was. It was just two people that just kept showing up and, wanted really just truly to help. It started as a YouTube channel, just to kind of like get ourselves out into the world and see what that was like. We followed a lot of fitness YouTubers at the time, and it was like, we think we can add something to this, and we can at least have fun with it, which is what we did, right? We did a lot of fun things training wise, and we started out, and got ourselves, I think, just put ourselves out there, at a time where there was a lot of attention around consuming that sort of information. And it sort of evolved into just continuing to show up and make another decision based off of the future. And, there's a really big rebrand that happened in 2016 when I graduated from university. That was sort of like that defining moment for us of like, this isn't just a college hustle, this is a real thing. And so that sort of took off from there. And then Now Sue Bush, Alex's wife, is also a co-owner of the company. And we have an awesome coaching staff of 7 folks, going to be 8 here soon. And assistants and things like that have just grown into something of just taking that next step. And the mission there is to always has been to educate someone, right? Which is kind of our slogan, is like educate, train, empower, right? So it's to educate you in all the inner workings of all of this, help you maximize your ability to train and show up and to get the most out of yourself, and then to truly empower you to take this on and sort of take the reins and do it yourself from here on out. And it's also, it's empower, I think, too, has a double meaning for me, where training brought a sense of empowerment to me and a sense of confidence to me that I had really, it was untapped before I really discovered it for myself. Where I wasn't really sure what to do with that, right? It's sort of like that, whatever it's inside of you that you're not sure how to define it, you're not sure how to express it, but it's there, right? And I'd always kind of just like had an outlet through sports that I was like, all right, maybe that's kind of where that goes. It sufficed for the time. But what training was for me, and kind of what this whole journey has been for me, has been in sort of that empowerment of, oh, you have this within you, and you can sort of take the reins at any given time and to make the most of it. And that's up to you, right? That's a self-ownership aspect of all of this. And it's all your responsibility, right? It's all on you. Anything that happens, anything you want to accomplish, it's you, it's your effort. You can't pay anyone to do it for you. And I think that was a really empowering part of it for me, and that has bled through our coaching and company mission and all that stuff.
Awesome, man. And I wanted to make sure that I asked you this. I try to with all my guests that have a background in fitness or exercise science. And I love talking about and hearing on the other side of the mic there about fitness myths and ones that will not die out. I know, or I'm sure you have a bunch in your head that you see people talk about all the time, or even read articles about. So what for you, what are those annoying fitness myths that just won't go away?
I will, I'm going to take a page from, I think the best place to kind of take it from, which is my book, which I started out the first chapter of my book discussing fitness myths. And, I thought hard about these because the publisher kind of came to me with a few ideas, and I liked some of them, but at the other ones I was like, yeah, it's not even worth really talking about. It's kind of like one of those things that's so outlandish. You're like, God, if you think about that for 3 seconds, you're like, all right, that doesn't make any sense. And so the ones that like really stuck out to me that I put at the very beginning of my book, like, is the first like true page of the book, which is page 8. Once you get past all the table of contents and introduction and the nonsense that's in books, but genetics matter, or kind of genetics being the limiting factor for you, right? And one of those things that I think is very important is genetics do matter, but they aren't everything, right? And again, there's even research that's shown, and kind of being told you're bad at something, or even that negative self-talk that you're bad at something, regardless of sort of how those genes express themselves physiologically, can negatively impact your performance, right? So your ability to sort of believe in yourself and to believe in a goal can produce a positive outcome, right? And I think it sort of goes alongside another thing that I put into the book on the next page, which was talking about somatotypes, and talking about this you're locked in place of being an ectomorph, mesomorph, or endomorph, or whatever. Like, all right, I'm super skinny, how do I do it? Or I'm built this way, how do I do it? Or I'm a little overweight, naturally, how do I do it? And right, so and kind of the comments that I left in this section of the book was like, your current body shape is not set for life, right? You can change and improve your physique through strength training. And you may identify with one of these sort of 3 body types most, but you shouldn't let your current body shape dictate your training recommendations, your ability to manage stress, sleep, nutrition, as well as your physical activity at any one time, and your ability to give effort in the gym will impact your body shape across a lifetime. So I think kind of like, to the root of it, like your body shape and body type is not a prison sentence necessarily. And it's something that can change and be impacted across a lifetime based off of the actions you're taking. And so I think that's a big one that I wanted to sort of smash early, was like people just feeling a prisoner in their own body, which again, I'm not here to like tell you not to. I think that's a real thing. And we all have our deeply rooted feelings around that, our own insecurities. And there's only so much I can speak to, as I've never been overweight or obese person, right? So there's only so much I can speak on this topic, but I don't like what I think I can speak on is self-limiting belief, where there's this level of acceptance of, well, this is who I am, and this is never going to change. Because when it does come to our physical selves, there's a lot of things that we can express and a lot of things that we can actively do to change that situation, right? Regardless of, many things, right? And there's obviously levels to that, and I'm always open for the nuance. I'm always open for the discussion and conversation that stems. But I think that's a big one, is kind of being a prisoner to genetics, or a prisoner to how you were born or where you are now, because there's a lot of things you can do to start to change that.
That's really interesting you bring that one up, because I've seen certain companies or brands or businesses promote specific products or exercise routines or nutrition routines based on that. Oh, well, you're an endomorph or ectomorph, so you shouldn't do this in the gym. And I always thought that was didn't really make sense in my mind.
There's a lot of things that sort of like we can assume. And again, it's like there's a lot of this that we have to assume on the consumer, assume on the behalf of whoever's doing this, whoever's on the other side of this. But like if you are someone who's always been super skinny and like can't gain weight and like whatever else, like there's a lot of assumptions we can make, right? You're probably someone who is highly active, has, would be put in a category of being like a term we'd recognize as like a hard gainer, right? So it's like, well, we should probably increase the amount of food you're eating, increase the total volume at which you're working. And like, there's a lot of stuff you can assume, right?
Good point.
But that said, that's not always true. And I think that's what you really that's a difference of making assumptions based off of the story you've told yourself versus real actual things that people are dealing with, right? And I think that there's an important piece there's a reason I haven't stopped coaching people, because I think as soon as you remove yourself from the trenches, you remove yourself from working with like real people day in and day out, you lose a sense of yourself. You lose a sense of sort of being tuned into the same frequency as people who are actually needing this information. And I think as soon as that happens, right, you sort of just lose touch, right? So, now that I no longer am in the trenches of learning how to track macros or something, like I've lost touch with what it is to learn how to track macros, right? And that's sort of like an easy thing I think all coaches and people that can sort of relate to. But I think, more recently I went back, because I don't track all the time, but there's moments where it's like, as soon as I start to lose touch with a concept, I almost put myself back through it. And all those things start to resurface. And then I noticed myself actually having different conversations with clients of like, oh, actually this week, dude, I struggled hard with that because, when it, pertaining to like starting to track again, or starting to get myself back into the gym in a consistent routine or something. There's things that you sort of just lose touch with and lose sight of. And you lose that, the ability to relate to real people doing this stuff. Right. And I think that's a big part of it, where what we do at Physique Development, we do, obviously have a very growing and evolving, competition prep service and coaching team. But the other thing that we do is really just, how do we help the people who actually need help? Right. So that's my biggest mission with, moving forward is, the 1%, the people who are, and when I mention the 1%, it's sort of those people in the gym. If you're someone and you walk into a gym, the 1% are the people who, for a fact, know exactly what they're doing. They might be just the jacked ones, or the people who would, just, you can tell, no, like they're like, that dude knows what the hell's going on. Right. And there's definitely a market to help the 1%ers, but I'm more interested. There's enough people doing that, in my opinion. And where I'm most interested is, how do I help the other, let's say 95 to 99% of people who walk into the gym and they're like, I have no idea what's going on in here. Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do these. Like, I don't know how to do anything on these machines. And there's sort of there's that knowledge gap, but there's also that friction of getting them into the gym and getting started, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be intimidated. They don't want to be put in an environment where they don't know what's going on. And to be honest, I don't either. Right. Because I think, when you're put in an environment where you have no clue what's actually going on, it sucks. Right. Like, it's one of the worst feelings. And I think as adults, we sort of get to experience the raw part of that. Because as kids, you're sort of just like, you can't really be embarrassed by not knowing, because you're like, well, I'm a kid. We think it as adults. You're like, oh, well, it's a kid. Like, what's it matter? He doesn't care. Like, kids are just kids. Like, they're going to jump into something and just do it for the sake of doing it. But as adults, we start to, form the ability to become embarrassed and feel shame and feel like guilty towards things. And honestly, I think I experienced a lot of that early on, where I think that's why I observed so much, was like, I was embarrassed more easily as a kid because I was super shy. And so it's like, I think that allowed me to sort of tune into that emotion and that feeling, and that having compassion towards that situation. And there's a lot of, if you go on our YouTube channel, it's filled with videos that hopefully help people. In my book, for example, hopefully breaks down those barriers of people being able to, learn the information in a non-intimidating setting, where no one's yelling at you, no one has their shirt off, no one's, doing anything like that. It's just a very compassionate, open-minded, and giving community that's here to really just help people, break down those barriers of entry to get into the gym and start consistently having healthier habits and feeling empowered, because there's a level of empowerment, as we touched on earlier, that you feel in the gym when you're in there, and then you're progressing, and you're able to tap into this side of you that you didn't know existed if you've never expressed it. Right. That, I've worked with, women in their 50s and 60s who almost have never experienced that side of themselves. And then you see it in action, where you put a weight on this is more in person, but like, you put a weight on the leg press, for example, that they're like, oh, I can't do that. But, like, based off their other reps and their other sets, you're like, yeah, you can do this. And it's this sort of like, again, it goes back to this self-limiting belief of what you're capable of doing. And once that, client, reps out 8 with what they thought they could never do, it's like, you see this aha moment sort of click, and that's a cool thing. Cause then it's sort of like, they almost stand up a bit taller, and they're a little, that side of them that they only, maybe their husband, their partner gets to see of them to, kind of have this renewed sense of confidence, comes out, and you're like, there it is. That's it
Yep.
right there. And, that's something that bleeds into every component of your life, regardless of what you're doing.
100% agree. And Austin, if people are looking to either purchase your book or connect with you, where can they do those things?
Yeah. So connecting with me, I do hang out on Instagram. I've gone through waves. I haven't hung out recently on Instagram, but I'm getting back to it. But you can find me, just search Austin, Austin, and I'm usually the bearded fella that pops up. Yeah, so Austin Current on Instagram. If you just search Austin, I should pop up. And then feel free to shoot me a message, whatever. Email me. It's austin@physiquedevelopment.com. Feel free to do that too. Open for that. If you aren't on Instagram, congratulations. Don't get one if you're not on there. And to get my book, Amazon's probably the easiest place to get it. Just go to Amazon, type in Science of Strength Training, and it's a yellow cover. That's pretty much it. And if you want to find it in person, you want to do the scavenger hunt of trying to find it in person, it is at Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, those types of places. But every store I go into, I try to find it because I don't know what else I'm going to be doing in there. It's like going to Target's probably the worst thing you could ever do, because Target weirdly has everything and you end up walking out of there with way more than you ever went in for.
Yep.
And so instead of walking around and buying things we don't need, I try to just find my book. And I found it once, but people have been sending me photos of it at Target. So it may be at your Target. It's not at mine currently here, but yeah, you can find it there, find it those places. And then, yeah, it's only like $15-16. So it's really not going to break the bank.
Awesome. I'm going to make sure to link all those in the show notes there for all the listeners. And I will personally be purchasing your book. And I'm going to look at the Target that's closest to our house. It's like 10 minutes away. So I'm going to check in there and then buy it if it's in there. And then I'll maybe even take a picture for you and send it over.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been in more Barnes and Nobles that I've been in. So you probably have more luck there, but yeah, if it is a Target, let me know. I'd be stoked. Also at Costco and Sam's Club, you can find it there.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I didn't even think about Costco, but yeah, in the middle, there's normally like some books in there, isn't there?
Mountains of books. Yeah, they're normally just stacked up, like in a weird spot. But a lot of people have been sending me that photo as well from Costco. So if you have a Costco and you go there, have at it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to the show today. And if you found value in the show today, go ahead and subscribe to the show and then leave us a review. It's going to help us tremendously. And again, Austin, thank you for your time today. I've had so much fun listening to just a bit about your life story, and then moving over to some of the science-y type of stuff. I absolutely love it. So thanks again, man. And until next time, everyone, stay mission driven. And done.